But right now, the position he's in, he actually has a small advantage because everybody else is opening the up in front of him. And he, oh, here we go.
Trouble, contact, and a huge crash. Up in turn number 2. Oh, multiple cars involved. Oh, my. It looks like Dan Wheldon may be involved in it.
And Eddie, you and I spoke about this morning on the drive-in. Just this amount of cars, the speed, just the chance for what they call the big one.
And what happens in conditions like that, even if you're 300 yards behind that, you cannot stop these cars. The only option you have is to try to avoid it, and it was impossible to avoid anything there.
And you saw Will Power, his car involved as well. My. What a mess. That's Townsend Bell that was, I think his car was up on its side there, the 22.
15 there of Jay Howard. An additional entry, excuse me, is that the 19 or 15? I can't see with the sun shining there. Some of the car is broken. They're showing that as Alex Lloyd, the 19.
It is the 15 of Jay Howard.
Yes.
One of the cars actually flew for about 200 yards in the air.
Red flag is out here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway on lap number 12. And from high above, you can see the carnage.
We talk about the car going through the air. Eddie, you know that these cars run so low down to the ground. We mentioned before, we saw them hitting the ground and sparking, that anything underneath the car, underneath the floor, underneath the tub, really just gets the air underneath the car itself, and up it will go.
We saw J.R. Hildebrand out of his car. There is Dario Franchitti. Somehow he managed to get through the carnage, but
Sure, guys, I mean, there's just nothing I can do.
Will Power did not.
10-4. They are going to stop you at pit lane on the right-hand side. They want the drivers to stay in the cars.
What Franchitti was alluding to is there's nothing he can do avoiding the debris that's on the track.
Well, there is debris everywhere. You can see just how many cars are literally torn apart. And this was the one thing, and there is the 18 of James Jakes. Now, he had a crash early in practice on Friday. That is actually a KV Racing backup car that they put together for him. Now, I don't see much damage on there, but he's out of the cockpit. And look at this from high above. And this was the one thing we were fearing when we saw qualifying and the two championship contenders in the middle of the field. A big crash like this early in the race.
What happens in accidents like this is that a single mistake by anybody, which might be dirty air, could be anything, multiplies itself so fast that you start accumulating cars. There's no way that you can control what happens. Once you start
high above.
We talked about 3 or 4 wide.
Watch Sebastian Zaveja, right?
Yes.
Little contact right there.
Now he's trying to go from the low side to the high, from the high side down low to get going for the turn.
Oh.
And what ends up happening is that he got stuck back up there, turned around, tried to take another move going down, guys, and the back end started to come around, and that started the chain reaction.
He was uncomfortable being on the top lane, and he tried, like you said, there's the car. There's 2 cars that are airborne. This puts
That's Wheldon
racing in perspective. This is the horrible accident that everybody has always hoped would never occur.
And as we said, 15 cars we now know of involved out of the 34 that started. Board with Will and give you another perspective of exactly what happened in this 15-car melee.
And Eddie, as we know, when you're driving along at these speeds, you're going the length of a football field in less than a second. So if something happens in front of you, you can never have enough reaction time.
It's impossible. You have no time to do anything. What happens maybe is just a small miscommunication between 2 drivers. Somebody spins and you have 20 cars that arrive on the scene at 220.
As you know, we just mentioned it's very difficult to try and avoid it. And as Dario was mentioning, he's just looking forward, trying not to hit the car that's in front of him or subsequent cars that are there. And luckily for him, he got through before everything started to go just upside down.
But it's also where you position yourself on the track. He was saying, he just said in his interview, he hated being around cars that he was uncomfortable with and everybody was doing something.
We are getting word that there's Randy Bernard.
Our thoughts and prayers are with his family today. IndyCar, its drivers and team owners, has decided to end the race. In honor of Dan Wheldon, the drivers have decided to do a 5-lap salute in his honor. It will take place in approximately 10 minutes. Thank you.
There will be no one-on-one interviews or questions. Thank you.
Did he confirm he's...
All right, we came in late on that, and folks, this is the hardest part of our job, and the last time I had to do this was 2006 with Paul Dana, but we have lost Dan Wheldon today here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. A tragic accident on lap number 13, and Dan Wheldon killed today here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. There'll be a 5-lap salute. Stay with us, please. From high above.
Now all the drivers are very crowded going into this corner, 3 abreast. One of them touches, goes sideways, Scott, and then mayhem.
And this is what we talked about before, that these speeds at 220 miles an hour, Eddie, you're going the length of a football field in less than a second, and you don't plan your next move at this speed. As you can now see, the cars starting to go one over each other, and they'll start to get up towards the catch fence, and those are the ones, the catch fences, that do the damage. The safer walls we've improved really helps dissipate the energy when the cars hit, but it's the catch fencing that's above the safer barriers that these cars got up into, and that is what has done the damage.
Another angle, and it's the second airborne car in your screen.
And as you mentioned, Eddie, cars just going for the same spot, and at this speed it just starts to go sideways. Cars start to climb up and over, and as further cars continue to come into frame, you'll see cars starting to slide through and jump into the air, and now watch towards the catch fence, and the car now goes up, it's airborne, and it gets catapulted, and it gets into the catch fencing with the cockpit area first, which is something that you just cannot be prepared for.
And there's nothing you can actually do. There's nothing you can do. The drivers are put into position. There's nothing they can do. Here it's in slow motion, but you can see how it arrives.
And the parts are going everywhere, and as a driver you're trying to miss the large pieces, the cars themselves, and parts are falling out of the sky. You really don't know where to go or what to do, and if you escape this and you get through it, you sort of pinch yourself when you're on the far side of it and said, I made it. And unfortunately, some did not.
Last angle on this that we will show you, as
it's very painful to watch.
It is. It's heart-wrenching. You know these people as competitors, as sometimes they're angry with what you say about them on the air, but trust me, when
there's
these moments, there it is right there, and that's the the impact you were talking about, Scott. Cockpit towards the catch fence. Another view from Danica's car, as she was one of the 19 that managed to make it through.
She's on the lower part of the track, which was a good position to be in, but she has a bird's eye view of everything from here.
And as we heard her say earlier in this telecast, that she thought things were just getting a little bit crazy. She had eased off the throttle, not something that race car drivers do, but she just felt uncomfortable, had something about it, a sixth sense, if you will, and turned around and just gave herself a little bit more breathing space, which is something that worked out very well for her.
Charlie Kimball's view, he was in the middle lane, had nowhere to go.
And a car went right over the top of him.
And there's another car flying over the top.
And literally, I've been in these accidents. There's nothing you can do. Once it starts to happen, the momentum has to just play itself out.
The number 77, Dan Wheldon's car number today, has now been put at the top of the scoring pylon here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And the tribute lap as the cars are beginning to form as we salute Dan Wheldon.